Hello, and warmly welcome to this session on IndTech and how we can transform the industry to be more sustainable and digital in the future. My name is Peter Wallin, and I'm the Program Director for PiiA. PiiA stands for Process Industrial IT and Automation. So basically, we're digitizing the process industry in Sweden. And we have since the start in 2013, together with industry, invested roughly 1 billion SEK in just that, digital transformation of industry.
An important investment, an impressive sum.
Thank you.
My name is Helena Blackbright. I am from Automation Region, and Automation Region is a center of excellence with focus on automation and digitalization. But we are also a cluster organization with approximately 170 members and partners. And together with them, we build good conditions for automation. And we are very happy to be here today. This is important.
Yes, and we have an exciting hour in front of us, don't we?
Indeed.
So for example, we will have some distinguished guests with us. We will have a panel, and we will discuss much more about the concept of IndTech and also how Swedish IndTech industry can utilize the tech frontiers of Silicon Valley and how we can collaborate more.
Yeah.
But first, I would like to introduce Jenny Elfsberg, who is the Head of Innovation Management at Vinnova. And Jenny also has first-hand experience with working together with Silicon Valley companies. She's been living there for a couple of years, and now she's at the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova. So welcome, Jenny.
Hello, guys. Sweden's industry has been around for hundreds of years. We have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of experience, and we have a lot of super cool products. Silicon Valley has been around since, well, silicon was needed for computing. Those two ecosystems have a lot of legacy to build on and a lot of different culture that can be combined and create something new, something even better. At Vinnova, we are so happy that this collaboration between Silicon Valley and the Swedish ecosystem in the industry context continues. We know this is crucial to the future and to both ecosystems. In Sweden, we have always been committed to development, to sustainability, and to innovation. In Silicon Valley, they have as well. We are quite similar in our commitments and our values, but we have differences. We have a lot to learn from each other. In Sweden, we have the stability and the systemic approach. In Silicon Valley, we have the speed, we have the growth mindset and the grit that you need to accomplish something quickly because the time is limited and the competition about money is tough. Such an awesome collaboration we can make happen through this program.
Cool. Hey, Jenny, nice to have you here. You have such a long experience from working with innovation in the industrial context, and you now spent several years in Silicon Valley working there. Now you're at Vinnova. You're the Head of Innovation Management there. You talk about the differences and how we can benefit from each other. But when it comes to the Swedish companies, what is the benefits for them to engage in Silicon Valley and collaborate with the companies there? And do you see any risks? You're talking about differences also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there are benefits. As I mentioned, the cadence in Silicon Valley, things are moving quickly. And also the willingness to collaborate. I mean, everyone is problem solvers for each other. So this pay it forward culture that whatever, if you mention to me you have a problem and I can solve it, I will provide you with 10 other possibilities. Talk to him, look at that, visit that. And that is something that is super obvious. If you just visit Silicon Valley, you will see it. So that is something that I think large companies, because we have the organization structure, we have the predictability and all these informed decisions. So combining the established system structure within large organizations with the cadence and the curiosity and the continuous learning commitment in Silicon Valley is really good. And also everyone comes there. I mean, whatever you think about Silicon Valley, everyone is there. So instead of establishing corporate innovation hubs all around the world, you can, it will not be enough with Silicon Valley only, but if you are there, you are definitely covering at least many of India's entrepreneurs, Israel's, and many countries are there. And I mean, I came from the automotive sector. There is a bunch of people there. I wouldn't go to Germany and US to visit all of them, but if I can bike over to Ford Motors, I mean, that's a lot easier. Okay. So the connection. And then when it comes to the risks, I think because of the cultural differences, it needs to be like respect for Silicon Valley. People need to understand that in Sweden, we want to make the informed decisions. We might not move quickly always, which doesn't mean that we are lazy, boring, or not interested. It's just that we want to make sure, I mean, we are so democratic. We want to make sure we have all facts before we make the decision. So a little bit risk adverse, but we need to protect what we have, so it makes sense. So they need to understand that. And we need to understand that the people we interact with in Silicon Valley, they have the cadence of, if you are a small startup, you have finance that might disappear if you don't deliver quickly. And you have also scarce resources. So they are amazing problem solvers. They move quickly. And if you then wait for 6 months to write like the first contract, well, they have left and go after someone else. So that mutual understanding from both sides.
Okay, so if I hear you right, two things that I hear. If you only have one international hub for innovation, it is Silicon Valley.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that is one thing. The other thing I hear from an innovation perspective is, I mean, what you describe of the characteristics of the Swedish companies is not really how we describe the prerequisites for innovation, really. It's the stability, it's the structures, those things that we normally try to avoid when we want to become more innovative. So we would benefit really from that innovativeness, the innovative spirit, so to speak, in the area. I would say the risk would be then, the largest risk would be the transformation from a non-innovative mindset, in a sense, or a non-innovative pace, to be in an environment where you are forced to be in that mindset.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually a risk we need to take if we want to maintain innovativeness.
It is. And it is, I mean, you can handle it if you have someone like the corporate translator, or like in Silicon Valley, the corporate innovation hubs, they need a lead, which needs to be a buffer. So that person needs to understand both the corporate and the local speed of the Silicon Valley ecosystem. And then that person can, secure the freedom of the fast moving, but still making sure they are committed to the corporate goals.
Yeah, and that in a sense is how I see our project actually, being that the translator, the bridge between the one that makes sure that we connect so that we understand each other a bit better and each other's perspectives before we move into collaboration.
Yeah, you guys can really do something good there, because you can help the Swedes also to become a little bit better at bragging. We have Jante. It's not really suiting in the Silicon Valley ecosystem. So boost up the self-confidence and the pride of the Swedes while still staying humble and curious. You guys can bridge that really well from your end, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here today. Always happy to see you.
So IndTech is a term that we've been working with for quite some time now, at least a couple of years. And when we talk about IndTech, you all heard terms like medtech, fintech, edu tech, and so on, but we haven't really had a good term for the industrial technology until now, when we have the IndTech term. And what do we actually mean by IndTech then? So when we talk about IndTech, it's actually about how we can use these automation systems that were installed during the 80s and 90s is basically all industries around the world. We automated the factory floors, we removed the people from the factory floor and put them into control rooms instead. The problem is that installed base of industrial automation system is roughly 50,000 billion SEK of worth today. And of course, now we have these new technologies coming. And when these new technologies like AI, machine learning, AR, VR, and so on, cloud computing comes, we can't just throw away these old technologies or these automation technologies that we were developed during the 80s and 90s and put in these new technologies. We need to be able to cooperate between these two technologies. So that's what we mean by IndTech, how we can enable these legacy automation systems and enhance them to be able to utilize these new technologies. And if we look at the Swedish IndTech part of it, so since we've been working this for a couple of years, we actually made some market studies here. So we can say that the Swedish IndTech business today is roughly 240 billion SEK, and we see that the IndTech business in Sweden has an annual growth rate of roughly 7%, which is quite a lot for the industrial companies. And when we now take the next step in IndTech, we see that we really need to collaborate with these tech frontiers of Silicon Valley and how we can utilize all these new technologies that are developed there. And when we talk about IndTech, it's not just about the technology. I mean, connecting a legacy system towards a new cloud computing system is not really that hard. But what's hard is to actually utilize these new business models and really enable these full ecosystems of opportunities when it comes to IndTech. So when we talk about IndTech, it's the whole ecosystem in how we can utilize these new technologies into creating new business models and services. It can be, for example, take the steel business. You might not even buy the steel, you might rent it. It might be a leasing service in the future. When you build a bridge, you would like to be sure that you can circulate the material later on. And then you need to have these circular business models coming in. And to do this, you need this connection between the legacy automation systems and the new technologies to be able to actually utilize the full potential of the IndTech business. So that's basically when we talk about IndTech, we mean this full ecosystem of collaborating systems around. And this term is actually spreading quite fast now, so I encourage you all to join this IndTech movement. And Helena, why don't you come up on stage and join me again?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. You helped us a lot here, I think, enlightening us about IndTech.
Yes,
and
so
what you described very much is the reason why we started the project I'm going to present here today.
So why don't you tell us a bit more about this really interesting project that we're now running together with Silicon Valley, and how we can actually make the tech frontiers of the Silicon Valley collaborate more with the Swedish industry.
Yes, and before I start, I just want to say that exactly what you described, how you described IndTech, is the reason why we're doing this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Stage is yours.
Thank you. So the Swedish IndTech Silicon Valley project started in 2019. And the background was partly as described by Peter, but it is also the larger context, the challenges that we meet in a global, in the global environment. That is impacting all of us. But even though we share those challenges and we have to meet them, we have to address them in a very local context. The thing is now we are meeting challenges that are so big we will not be able to solve them with more of the same. We know we will have to innovate. And they are so challenging, we might even have to innovate not only what we do, but we might have to innovate how we innovate. So with that as a background, some funding from Vinnova, we joined together with PiiA, with the Nordic Innovation House Silicon Valley and Automation region. So we said we joined forces, and since we know that the very backbone of innovation is collaboration, and especially when you want to reach more radical innovations, really renew yourself, you need to merge different competencies, different domains, and you need to really have them in a clash together. So what we did is that we opened up our networks, the established networks we have, and we're focused on methods and events where companies can meet. So collaboration is at core. So what we've done is that we have made a lot of different activities where we focus on letting companies from Sweden and the Nordics meet with companies from Silicon Valley to be able to tap into the very front end of technological development that is taking place there. And we've done that in several ways, because even if IndTech is important, it's not the entire picture. We also need the things that surrounds it, that's embedded in. So we're focused on, for an example, business plans, the use of data, and different aspects like that. It has been very successful, I must say. Companies have showed a great interest and have been very engaged. So we can already see the first collaborations formed across the Atlantic, and we can also see how strategic partnerships is formed.
Now it's time for our next guest. And it's with great pleasure I would like to introduce Karin Olofsdotter, who is the Swedish ambassador to the US. And Karin will share her thoughts on IndTech and also about this IndTech Silicon Valley project.
Hi everyone, and thank you to Vinnova Silicon Valley for arranging today's event. I'm very excited to open this panel on IndTech, or industrial technology, which is an important topic that Sweden is highly invested in. The term IndTech is the collective name for technologies that are applied to make industry smarter, or in other words, digital and sustainable. Swedish industry is undergoing structural transformation. This transformation is driven both by technological development and by the need to respond to climate change. A transition to a clean energy industry and a low-carbon society directly contributes to several of the sustainability development goals. It also creates great job opportunities for economic growth and job creation, and thus adds to the potential for developing stronger social benefits and contribute to many societal goals. So, to transform our industries and to realize the sustainable development goals, we depend on strong international cooperation. And transatlantic cooperation is key in developing a more sustainable and digital industry. Swedish IndTech Silicon Valley is a project that aims to strengthen the ties between the innovation system in Sweden and technology frontiers in the US by creating a strong transatlantic collaboration. The project is led by Automation Region and the Strategic Innovation Program PiiA, and aims to increase both technical and business-related competence in sustainable technology with a focus on sustainable production. I'm really proud to announce that Automation Region and PiiA have received additional funding from the Swedish innovation agency Vinnova to accelerate the development towards a more sustainable industry through international collaboration. The additional funding will allow the project to continue for at least 1.5 years. So, congratulations to Automation Region and PiiA, and to their local partners, Nordic Innovation House Silicon Valley and Business Sweden in San Francisco. We are very much looking forward to following this project. The US is one of Sweden's most important markets, and Swedish companies have been present in and contributed to US economy for over 100 years. Sweden, or Swedish companies I should say, is the 15th largest investor in the US. The Swedish companies in the US cover a wide range of sectors, and they do a significant part of their R&D in the US. There is a long tradition and a productive bilateral cooperation in the field of innovation. I am confident that the IndTech project will benefit from these long and strong industrial economic ties. So, Sweden already has a strong presence in the US, and we will further strengthen it this year when we open a consulate general in San Francisco. This will create an even better opportunity for cooperation on the US West Coast. In the spring, we're also launching the US-Sweden Green Transition Initiative. That is an initiative that will further strengthen the Swedish team in the US, focusing on the contribution to the green transition in your country. We see a great match here between the Biden administration's ambitions for a green transition and Swedish innovative products and solutions. And as I mentioned before, many Swedish companies are already present in the US, and the Green Transition Initiative is a way to leverage their efforts and boost their contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. So, with these exciting opportunities for 2022, I really want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
As we heard from the ambassador earlier on, the Swedish IndTech Silicon Valley is extended and will continue. But you will hear more about that after we meet with a panel that is the main attraction of this event. And we have a really cool panel of 6 persons, experts from different fields and different companies. And we will meet Shilpa Kolhatkar, Head of Global Business Development at AI Nations at Nvidia. We will meet Antonio Zarcone, Account Executive at Cogniac AI. Prachi, Vakharia, Advisor and Head of Safety and Alliances at SafeAI. We will also meet Ola Norén, Head of Metallurgy at ABB. Gro Dyrnes, Chief Commercial Officer at Ivaldi. And Helena Malmqvist, Research Manager at Jernkontoret. Warmly welcome. Happy to have you here.
So great. So Ola, I will start with a question to you actually, since ABB is here in Västerås where we are today in this studio. So I mean, ABB has a long experience in working with collaborations from leading experts and companies around the world. But I mean, you're a big company, so why do you need international collaboration with others? Can't you just do everything yourself?
No, well, it's a valid question. Being a multinational company, I mean, being part of all corners of the world, but I mean, beauty and knowledge comes in so many flavors, and there is this comparable competitiveness. No, I mean, there are fields that you don't have yourself that you find elsewhere. So, I mean, cooperating with others is really at the heart of what we're doing. I mean, that's the way we can compete. That's the way we can take things further. So, it's not a contradiction being a multinational company and cooperating across the world.
Prachi, happy to have you here. Using AI in mining can in many ways reduce the risk for personnel working on site, if I understand it right. And the vision of SafeAI is to accelerate the transition towards a fully autonomous mining and construction. When do you see that be technically possible, and what part in that is SafeAI? What part do you have in that development?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So SafeAI is a Silicon Valley-based company. We've been in operations since 2017, 2018, and our focus is on making existing heavy equipment fully automated. So our goal is to take any kind of equipment that's used at, say, a mine site or construction site today, like a dozer, skid steer, rollers, of course, the huge mining trucks that you may have seen, which are 5 stories tall and carry 200 tons of materials. That's what we want to fully automate. AI has been used in the mining sector for a variety of applications, be it for mineral discovery, mapping, to optimize the operations. And SafeAI, AI is very much in the term, in our name itself, is to safely use AI to make this heavy equipment intelligent enough to carry all these operations ourselves. Right now, we are at what SAE level 4 or 5 of autonomy. And of course, our goal is to get to level 5 as soon as possible. We are already working with mines in Australia, and soon we'll be expanding to Latin America, Canada, and Japan as well.
You were saying as soon as possible. Are we talking about years, single years, or is it decades? Yeah. When do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. I think everybody thinks when they think of automation, they think of things like Waymo, driverless cars on the road. But actually, automation has been in the mining sector since the 90s. And it was actually Caterpillar in about 1994, I believe, that first came out with an automated truck. Of course, they were using the old kind of AI tools. They were using old sensors. Today, we've made rapid advances with robotics, with AI, with machine learning. So SafeAI is using these new technologies to bring autonomy today. And when I say we are operating with fully automated trucks right now. It's a pilot period, but in about 2 to 3 years, we can expand our fleet to more automated vehicles. So the vision is really very near term, and I would say it's things for driverless vehicles on the road, which would be a bit of a long-term vision, maybe 5 to 10 years. But definitely in sectors where it's a closed environment, we will see autonomy earlier.
Well, that's really cool. And I mean, we know since COVID had been a couple of years past like that, right? Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I mean, if I turn to you, Helena. So I mean, we talked a lot earlier this session about the IndTech and how it's transforming the industry. And I mean, you're representative of, quite a large part of the Swedish industry, which is the steel and metal producers. But they're also quite a large emitter of CO2, for example. How do you see that this new technology can help and guide and reduce this footprint that you're part of?
Yes, it's true that the iron and steel industry is a large emitter of CO2. But then we have to keep in mind that most of it, more than 80%, comes from the actual chemical process within the blast furnace. It's because we use coal to reduce the iron ore to iron. And this can only be helped by using a totally different technology. And of course, we are working on that part. But there is still other parts of CO2 emissions that we could help from the process. And I think AI could be really useful for this. It could help us reduce the need of raw material and also avoid bottlenecks in the production and improve the product yield. And I think in every way that the processes can be smarter and more effective, there will be less emissions. And by producing products with higher quality, there will also be less emissions while using the material. And I think that's really, really important too, to be able to produce stronger and lighter material, to not just focus on the production process, but also the outcome from the industry.
Yes, and I think something very interesting here is something that we touched upon earlier today, is that it's not single technology, it's about embedding technology and finding those the bigger context, seeing the bigger picture and see how it contributes to different applications and how that forms something. Do you agree on that?
Yes, for sure. I mean, you have a traditional process with traditional techniques in it, and then you need to mix it with new technology and new ideas. So this is a field that will for sure grow in the future.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask you, Antonio, could you please share a bit about collaboration you have had so far with the Swedish companies?
Definitely. So I'd like to highlight the fact that we are keen on working on partnerships. As for instance, we have started with Nvidia. There's a press release which is showing we are intensively working together since we need to find synergies and find the best technologies to achieve sustainability in our solutions. Regarding our activities in Sweden, for instance, as you mentioned, we started also with ABB Synerlip, but we have extended our activities since we are working in different industries, starting from the automotive industry. For instance, we are in touch and working intensively in the latest even weeks with one of the major car maker and vehicle maker in Sweden. So we're working together with the two divisions for the passenger vehicles and for the trucks, and it's been an interesting collaboration because we are contributing with the AI technology. We're providing major forthcomings in the optimization of manufacturing processes, and this in a way which is quite unique, in a way which achieves or enables some scalability and usability of the solution, so user friendly and very easy to implement. And this has been quite well appreciated by this potential customer. But as has been mentioned before, so AI is not only in the manufacturing. Recalling the sustainability topic we have in the background, we have started working with several energy companies. One of this is also in Sweden. It's one of the biggest energy producer in Sweden. And we're proud to work with them because it's also a contribution to the environment by increasing the efficiency of the energy production, at the same time keeping the safety in doing that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you mentioned this. I mean, all those issues are very, I mean, we discussed them repeatedly, especially when it comes to AI, I would say, the sustainability, the question about risks and all those things. So it's very interesting that you mentioned them. Let us please come back to that. Okay, then I would like to turn to you, Shilpa. You work at Nvidia, and it's a world-leading company that is really driving the technology development. Within several sectors where heavy industry is one. We've heard several examples here today, but I'd like to ask you, could you give a couple of examples of what impact AI will have on the heavy industries, such as process industry, automation and production?
Absolutely. So I think with AI, there are so many different ways to increase efficiencies. Our partner, Cogniac, Antonio mentioned some of them in terms of safety or in terms of operational efficiency, and Prachi mentioned the same. But through the lens of sustainable development, there are really a lot of benefits in using techniques like computer vision, for example, or machine learning to predict system failures, let's say, to prevent environmental hazards or to avoid things like leakages or reduce emissions. There's another technology, emerging technology, which is really applicable to a lot of industries, including heavy industry, is called digital twin. And in this digital twin, which is basically a replica of your physical world, maybe it's a factory, it's basically replicating that in a virtual world so that a more sustainable design of the product or the factory can be built, right? Where engineers can explore all the different possible permutations and combinations of a design and generate design alternatives, and then finally use that to go and implement that in the real world. So I think there's a lot of benefits like that through IoT, through digital twins.
Yeah, indeed.
So a follow-up question, and I mean, for example, you already have a lot of collaborations with Swedish companies. I know, for example, Volvo Group and others, of course, as well. But so why do you think Sweden is interesting to collaborate with? I mean, we are such a small country in the end, if you compare to US and others. So why is Sweden interesting to collaborate with?
It is very interesting to us, yes. So as part of, so I'm actually with the public sector group here at Nvidia, and I head the AI Nations Initiative. So as part of that AI Nations Initiative, our objective is to engage with governments to harness AI right from cloud to edge to improve economic growth, to grow national security, citizen experiences, even public health in the light of the given situation with the pandemic. It's come to be well known that AI supercomputing is the new driver of economic growth, industrial innovation, and Sweden has done a really good, it's at the forefront of using supercomputing for bringing in these transformational changes in research and academia, but also in the actual industrial adoption of AI. And we have partnerships with the academia, research institutions, as well as with the industry. And so that's what makes Sweden very interesting for us, because our other program that we run at NVIDIA is called NVIDIA Inception, which is basically a virtual incubator for AI startups. And we collaborate closely with countries like Sweden, where we want to really help grow the number of AI startups in the ecosystem. Because NVIDIA, as you know, we are the AI platform is in the hardware and the software stack, which enables our ecosystem to build the verticalized applications. So for us, ecosystem is very important.
What is the main challenges when you introduce, I mean, we are in a position where we introduce novel technology, and it's one thing if you're born in the new technology, but when you're making the transformation, when you're implementing it in established firms, what are the main challenges in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, the one thing is perhaps behaviors in a way where you are used to work with. But I mean, going into the industry, there are so many other things that need to work as well. I mean, you have 24/7 operations that need to work at all times. I mean, that's nothing you just rip and replace with something you don't believe. So there is a certain resistance in just the implementation of some technologies, but we see. I mean, that's everything is moving faster and faster, and I wouldn't say that it's always slow implementation either. I mean, it's heavy investments that's being done. It's really in the forefront of what we can do. We see autonomous operations. We see. I mean, large and large control rooms. We see decision support and AI supporting our process industries. I mean, predictive maintenance going in. I mean, there are so many things happening as well. So I see that there is a resistance. It takes time, but it's not that nothing happens. I a bit oppose the question, but we'd be happy to hear what others say. If
Yeah, and I'd like to add that I think among the challenges, especially around the traditional industries, right, where much of the interaction and the workflows are still kind of in the physical realm, as opposed to online retail or some of these platforms where everything happens in the digital realm. So it's easy to see your traffic, your customers, your number of clicks. It's easy to apply algorithms and machine learning to that, right? But in traditional industries, it's first of all the ecosystem, the number of players. It's a very fragmented space, and also digitizing all of that takes time. So that's the technological challenge. But also there's the aspect of just the workforce upskilling and the next generation of talent who needs to be upskilled to know and speak AI. And that is where, in fact, we engage deeply with countries on those fronts of AI upskilling and use the Nvidia Deep Learning Institute to engage with universities, and even as much as we go down to the high school level to make sure that we are training the next generation of the AI practitioners.
Thanks, Shilpa. To add to your point as well, I think there are two main barriers. One is either leadership thinking, so maybe there's not enough leadership, but then also from employees' standpoint, there's some fear of AI. Will I lose my job? So that's on the people realm. And I think in terms of the technological realm itself, there is fear of embracing new technology. Again, when you have legacy systems, which you've invested a lot of money into, it's very hard to make the switch. A lot of legacy systems are also not interoperable. So you cannot add a new automated truck in a fleet because it's not going to talk to your fleet management system. It's not going to talk to your other systems in place. This is what we see in mining. So breaking some of that as well, I think modularity in technologies really helps, and that can mean an introduction of new technologies. So good leadership, addressing genuine concerns people have, and then finding a way to adopt new technologies easy, I think is going to break barriers to bringing AI.
I'd like to connect to and Prachi, and I think the biggest challenge beyond the technology itself, so aligning hardware, aligning software, aligning the talent and the knowledge base behind that to be able to go to the next step with new innovative technologies. It's also the consequence on the social side of that. So the society needs to move into a learning society. So as Prachi was mentioning, it's the pipeline of how do I get the talented people who are able to connect the points between what Nvidia is doing on the hardware, what we're doing on the software, and all the transformation in every industry, from the soft to the heavy industry in their processes, including the people who are going to work on this process will need to learn this new way of working. And the background in creating this knowledge is to create new way of learning. It's learning organizations, learning society, which needs to follow the speed, as Ola was mentioning. That's the challenge.
Cool. Yes, indeed. But challenges are also based for doing it differently, isn't it?
Yes, I think from my experience, everything has been mentioned that we see when we collaborate with large companies from Ivaldi's side. And also having worked with large corporations in my earlier days, I saw it a little bit from the other side. And I think Ola mentioned the challenge about the startup having to, innovate rapidly, validate all the time, validate hypotheses, while the corporate need a sense of trustworthiness towards the solution. It needs to be tested. It takes time to implement it into daily operations, etc. So there's kind of a discrepancy between the need for speed and the need for validation between the two. But at the same time, I think that is also the basis for why a startup and a corporate can form a good power couple.
It's cool you mentioning this and how you describe it. We had Jenny Elfsberg here with us earlier, and she's the head of innovation management at Vinnova, the Swedish innovation agency. And she described this difference that you described a little bit as the characteristics of the Swedish system and the Silicon Valley system. And you mentioned you have a long experience also from different roles and being in Silicon Valley. What would you say is the benefits if we let go of the challenges for a while? What is the benefits for the Nordic companies to collaborate with Silicon Valley?
Well, I think your earlier question as well was related to why do the Nordics and Silicon Valley need each other, and I think it certainly goes both ways. For me, at least, the biggest thing with Silicon Valley is the ambition, the density of people with like-minded and complementary interests, the drive, the belief that we can make a difference, and the willingness to take the risk to test out if we can make a difference and to learn along the way. So there's a curiosity and a geekiness and an attitude to reach out to people and to learn, and people have the like-minded interests, which means that most people have something to bring to the table which can make sense in that setting. And for Nordic companies who work very, let's say, step-by-step, organic, very structured is my experience, and focused, but maybe that, anything can happen, the serendipitous moments and the willingness to take that, to open the hand for that serendipitous moment, that is something that I think we as Nordic people can all be exposed to and learn from. On the other hand, my experience is that Silicon Valley-based companies like to work with Nordic companies because we have good technologies. We're not great at wrapping our technologies, which means that you get what you think you get. And you get it within the time you think you get it. You get it at the quality you think you get it. And that's very easy to collaborate with. And so I think we have a lot more to bring to the table than what we sometimes believe ourselves.
That is also something we heard.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
Is the
But
time.
it's the jump that we have in
Yes.
Sweden. We are quite modest most of the time.
Yes, indeed.
So a question to you, Helena. So I mean, you represent quite the conservative business that we talked about a bit, and I guess the tech suppliers are present in Silicon Valley, but I don't think we see many of the large Swedish process industries represented there. How would you sell it to your members at Jernkontoret that they should be active in Silicon Valley? Or should they?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, the Swedish steel industry needs to be in the forefront when it comes to all kind of technical development. Otherwise, we will not stay competitive on an international market. And of course, we need to work with the ones that are the best. And that's wherever we can find them. So if they are in Silicon Valley, we should work with Silicon Valley. And I mean, the best collaborations are always when you work really close together with the problem owners and the problem solvers. So I guess collaboration is the key here.
Indeed. I mean, I truly believe that, I've said it before today, collaboration is key to innovation, really. And especially in times of change, we need to collaborate across boundaries. We really need to be broad. I'd like to ask you, and again, maybe more open, I don't know who to start with, so jump in when you feel free. We talked about different things this far, but one thing that I would like to hear is what technologies do you think will be the most important and have the biggest impact on the industries in terms of sustainability?
I can start then in terms of sustainability and technology. The one technology then that drives a lot of investments is the electrification, I should say. That drives a lot of investments at the moment, but when it comes more to AI, I mean, just the increased number of sensors, the possibilities to collect a lot of data, and the ever cheaper data processing capacities is sort of that really makes things that we could optimize things. We could here we get the autonomous operations or the increased yields, increased qualities, get more for less. I think that's also that's something that's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. I can jump in as well. I think, Ola, you're absolutely right. We are seeing AI and mining improve the operations for sure, where you optimize the usage of resources, be it human resources, equipment, transportation. The other aspect we're using AI for a lot is mapping, finding where the minerals are, even sorting through minerals from recovered ore and using, there's a smart sensor, which is basically a laser that's like looking through this recovered ore and able to understand where the mineral is present so it can be extracted more easily. So applications like this are galore. I will add that I think AI in the near term is not sustainable. What I mean by that is a simple process of collecting so much data, putting in all these sensors, having so much data that we've never had in humanity's history. Tagging all of that data, storing that data, and then making sense out of that data. I think that's a very computationally intensive process. Companies like Nvidia make it less computationally intensive, but it is intensive, takes a lot of energy. So I do want to say like AI in the near term definitely is not sustainable.
But do you think
we
it
collect
will be?
too much data that we don't know how to use yet, basically.
One perspective might be to have, for instance, some distributed intelligence, which means instead, so we're tending, there was a time, there's still time where we're talking about the cloud, everything goes into the cloud. One of the motivation, for instance, for the 5G is to have local computing power available at low power and high speed, which means that there's a way to perform some AI remotely, so with edge computing, which filters the amount of data which needs to be centralized. It calls for what Shilpa was calling supercomputing, which doesn't mean to have the traditional old-style huge mainframes, but to have the capability of have a ultra-low power, high-speed computing at the edge, so where the information is needed, and then maybe backing this up with something locally, centrally. So that's the key to have still an AI which is sustainable by having low power consumption and intelligent way of managing the data from the source.
Really cool. Thank you.
If I may piggyback a little bit on what has been said already, for me, AI is an enabling technology. And I think any enabling technology then that can help us reduce, recycle, reuse both data but also physical, like materials, etc. Will be the most important technologies. And AI helps us understand. It helps us get better insight, help us share that insight and get alignment around what actually works. And so while sensors, connectivity is essential in spreading that information and that understanding, but coming from Ivaldi, I have to mention new production technologies, material technologies. So our value proposition and our vision is that industrial companies should be able to have their spare parts manufactured locally, where they need them, when they need them. And obviously that is not happening tomorrow, that you can do that for all. It doesn't make sense from a business perspective tomorrow to do that with the majority of your spare parts, but it makes sense for according to our findings, about 8% currently. And that number is increasing day by day because of robotics getting faster, cheaper, better, new materials, new production methods. And so essentially making sure that we produce only what we need and keep the waste to a minimum, and also spend more or use less materials while making what we need is essential.
That's really cool. And I've heard that we're close to the end of this session. And I think this was kind of a very nice last, perhaps, part of it.
Yeah. So.
But I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to come here. I would like to ask all of you very briefly why you've already answered, but if you have anything to give to the audience about what to think about when collaborating, why the international collaboration between Sweden, Nordics and Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I think from the Nvidia perspective, Sweden is a very interesting place for us because we think that Sweden is really a hotbed for innovative thinking, for development, for testing, and our partnerships with some of the big companies like Volvo, but also with some of the smaller, like the AI startups, is really proving beneficial because we want to have an expanded footprint and basically have the global solutions, right? So international collaboration and the partnership with Sweden is fantastic. We look forward to continuing our partnership.
Thank you. We look forward.
Yeah. I can add.
Any other insights?
Absolutely. I can just add from SafeAI's perspective again, Silicon Valley, as it says in the name, is all based on silicon. We are really focused on software in the valley. And what Sweden and the Nordic region brings is amazing hardware capabilities, and software and hardware together can be really powerful. So looking forward to the partnerships there.
So for me, the Nordics is an amazing, like Shilpa said, sandbox, but for different industries. Sweden is Silicon Valley for certain industries. Norway is certainly for the electrification of the mobility sector, for example, for energy, and for the maritime industry. Finland has been for telecom. So I think you have kind of the Nordics. Each of the Nordic countries are hotspots for very specific industries, and if Silicon Valley can use that to pilot, they will have the best partners in that pilot, I think, for certain industries.
Happy to hear that. Thank you.
Can we connect with Gro? Yes, that's exactly one of the reasons why Sweden, especially in the Nordic area, historically speaking, also from the area where I'm coming from, telecommunications and energy, has been one of the most innovative. And when I'm saying innovative, it's not only creating new ideas, but implementing them. So there is an attitude in letting this happen. So I want to do something and just do it. So it's an openness in accepting the innovation and implementing this in a very sustainable way.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, beauty happens when we take the competence, knowledge, and findings, business models, and whatever happens in perhaps the sharing attitude of developing that happens in Silicon Valley, and bring them back to the where we have the domain expertise then in the mining, minerals, metals segments. That's really where the magic happens. So it's really about collaboration and sharing the findings and really get the if we were to save the world here with the sustainability goals that we had. I mean that's the way we need to work.
And with that, I'd like to say thank you to the panel. It's been wonderful having you here. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much for giving of your time and sharing those very valuable insights. Looking forward to meet you again, but until then, thank you. So it's not only the panel that is about to that we need to close now. We're about to close this session. So Peter, what is up next?
Of course, with this hour we're not done. We're just starting the project, so we have a lot of activities planned. For example, we will deep dive into how AI can be a sustainability enabler. Together with AI Sweden, Silicon Vikings, Nordic Innovation House, of course, and other partners as well. But we will also, hopefully, be part of the Bifrost Summit now in March in Silicon Valley. We hope to be there in person, but of course the pandemic might put some obstacles in the way for that. So then we will hopefully have some digital webinars instead. But that's still pending a bit. So those are two of the activities we plan during the spring. But of course, if you follow us on social media and stay tuned on our webpage, you will learn much more about what we are planning. And I need to mention that we have this IndTech report that I talked a bit about earlier. It's available for downloading on our webpage, so both in Swedish and English. So you can actually learn Swedish by looking at the English version if you would like to do that.
On recommendation from you.
Yeah, exactly. So then you can enhance your collaboration skills with the Swedish industry if you're from US.
Yes.
So,
and as we heard from the ambassador, we have the project is continuing for at least 1.5 years. So stay tuned.
Exactly, and we hope we'll be continuing much more than that. But to start with, we have 1.5 years that
at
we
least,
will
yes.
have. So thank you so much for listening today, and we hope to see you soon. And please follow us on social media and do visit our webpage. Thank you.
Thank you.